Big thanks that you accepted this invitation to talk about the start of the school year and about all of the starts, about starting school, starting a class. And I'm really happy that we are hosting this event, and I feel blessed that you are here with me today.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lucie.
Thank you.
Wonderful.
It's really amazing for us too.
And to see everybody from all over the world like this is incredible.
Mm-hmm.
My first question is if you can tell us something about your Montessori journey and how this journey was like for both of you, and how was it like for you in the early days. I think all of us know your books. We know a little bit from your bio, but maybe this first question can be more personal and, talking about your first experience.
Okay. Well, I'll start. And it was a long time ago, I can tell you that. Early 1960s in Cincinnati, Ohio. I had 4 little children under the age of 6. I was a very busy mother, a very worn out, overwhelmed mother. And I had friends who felt the same way. And our children went to a school that would be interested in something like Montessori. And so, in fact, they did start a Montessori classroom. However, I was very skeptical because I had taught public school for a year, and I was teaching having my own children at home. And I had read Standing's autobiography or biography of Montessori. Mm-hmm. And I thought to myself, well, this sounds beautiful, but children really just aren't like that. Mm-hmm. So my whole journey from those beginning days until now has been to discover that, in fact, children are really like that if you have the right environment for them and the right adult attitude with them, and that it in fact does work exactly the way Standing said. So I want this to be my public apology to E.M. Standing and all the Montessorians that knew him for having that first reaction. And it tells you a whole lot more about me than it does about him, because it's a beautiful book, and it's still my favorite book of Montessori's life. He knew her the best. He was with her the most. He's a very well-educated and brilliant man in England. And this is the one you really should go to find out about her and her life. Plus the things that Ami in Holland is printing her letters to her grandchildren. Those are absolutely beautiful little glimpses as to her as a person, which is important. Mm-hmm. So, Paula.
And then your early journey. So you started the school.
Well, you want me to tell you more about that? I was going to let you talk. All right, my turn. All right. So yes, in Cincinnati, we did. I became the assistant in the classroom, the Montessori classroom that was being started. It was taught by a wonderful teacher called Hilda Rothschild, who had been trained by Montessori, and she was a refugee from Germany in the World War II. And it was her magic with the children that really brought about such a change in them within certainly within months, but really within weeks. Now she the whole time was saying, they're not repeating, they're not doing this, they're not doing that. So those of you that are starting a school, just know that the beginning is rough and you have to have faith. And sure enough, by springtime, she was seeing what she wanted to see with the children. Of course, I was amazed from the first day because I just couldn't believe the way the children responded to her and how she dealt with them, helped them to bring out their best selves. It was just miraculous. So that experience was the very beginning. And then my friends and I felt so fortunate to have this for our children. But it was the early 60s with all of the riots and the terrible things that were going on all through the 60s. So we very quickly started the Head Start was beginning at that time. So we started Head Start classes in the inner city in Cincinnati, where all the riots were taking place. And it was that experience that really, really sold me on what Montessori can be for the whole world, because those children had many needs and their parents were so appreciative of everything we did, worked so hard for their children. And no one can ever tell me that parents all over the world, whatever their situation, don't care about their children and put them first, because it was very clear with those parents and they were so grateful. And so unfortunately, then I was so happy with everything we were doing, and we started a training class course at Xavier University for graduate students, which is still going strong, and a research program at the University of Cincinnati. But then my husband wanted to move to Chicago for his job. And of course, even today, I think the wives go where their husbands need them to go, but also the husbands go where the wives need them to go. But anyway, so we came to Chicago and my journey began there. I taught in a private school, a Montessori-like classroom in a private school. And I did that for 7 years. Now, what the great thing about that, for my experience and for today's conversation, is that every single year I had to start a brand new class of children. And they were 5 and 6 years old. It was a kindergarten class. I wasn't given full range of what to do, but I was given 2 full hours with no interruptions, could do exactly what I wanted. The rest of the time, the principal was marvelous. Malcolm Coates was his name. He was incredible and gave me all kinds of leeway to do the things that I wished. So we can talk about that later. But after that 7 years, my appetite was really whetted to see what would happen if you could have children all day long, truly Montessori, 3 age groups, do exactly what Montessori said to do, no compromises, whatever, really be authentic about it. And so we went to get, my colleague and I that started the school went to get AMI training in Milwaukee, which hadn't been available to me before. And one of my daughters, who's now the head of school at Forest Bluff, had already gotten that training in Washington, D.C. So she was the one that started our school that we were going to be certain really followed what Montessori said. And the thing that was just astounding to me, of course, I didn't know if it was going to work. I didn't, she said that these incredible things would happen to the children in terms of academics, behavior, etc. But I still had that little bit of wonder, could this really happen for all, most of the children, if not all of them? And so I thought, okay, we're going to try. And I can tell you that over 40 years later, it does work. Don't ever give up. It does work. I promise you. It is hard work, particularly to be sure that it's sustainable going forward into the future. But you can do it. You really can do it, especially today. It's much easier today than it was then in terms of the trainings, availability, the interest in Montessori, etc. So that's enough.
Okay. Stop there. Well, let's see, getting into Montessori, I grew up as a Montessori child because of my mother. I went to Montessori preschool, just ages 3 to 6, and then to traditional school because we didn't have Montessori elementary in our area at that time. And I took the Montessori training after college and saw what my mother and my sister Lynn Jessen were doing with Forest Bluff School, the school that they started then. And I was very intrigued. So I came and taught there, was the head of school there, ended up writing the book and so on. But I think what I have been so fortunate to have that I wanted to share today is being able to watch my mother in the classroom as a primary teacher and watch her modeling how you talk with the children, how you move. And most of us get this if we're lucky enough to have Montessori training. We look very much to our trainers for this. It was even more to be able to watch someone in the classroom. And so I feel really fortunate that I was able to copy, so to speak, her way of speaking with children, her way of moving with them and interacting with them, that I hope we can share with you a little bit today. And you can kind of feel the life of that in the tone of voice and the expressions that really intrigue children and connect them. And I think that's one of the hardest things when you're first starting out. One of the hardest things is to then when you do what you've been trained to do with the children and they don't respond, you think, oh, what am I doing wrong? What can I do differently? It helped me so much to just watch or, see how you spoke with the children in a group, individually, giving lessons, just the mannerism and way of functioning in a classroom and picking up all the little things that you had figured out over teaching for so many years. So that's my
Well, the only thing that I would add is, I promise you, I have 5 daughters, and 3 of them ended up being very involved in Montessori education. 2 of them at Forest Bluff, Angel and Lillard at the University of Virginia. I want to promise you, I never tried to encourage any of them to do this.
That's true.
Because I was struggling hard and I knew how much work it was and so on. And I knew it has to be a passion. It has to be your soul. But lo and behold, they all ended up there. So the good Lord must have had something to do with it.
Yeah.
But it wasn't me. I didn't do it.
It's true. It's true. We were intrigued.
Okay, first I will show the book that you were talking about. It's this one, right?
Yes.
Yes. Thank you. Yes.
So it's this one. We also put the name and the author in the chat for those who missed it. So question, when starting a school, what do you think are the most essential things to focus on?
You or me.
Well, I'll start with just a couple things that we've talked about a lot. And one is starting small. Just keep it small, keep it simple in the beginning, and build very gradually and be very, very fiscally responsible. I think that's incredibly important. You don't want to get into a situation where you're relying on other people, especially, I think what you did with Forest Bluff is you started with yourself and a few teachers and kept the control so that you weren't relying on other people for the financial support and then having to capitulate to their desires if they're not Montessori trained. That can be difficult. So just keeping it, I think the quality is so much more important than the quantity when you're beginning. And it's for the children to keep the quality really at the height that the children deserve.
And of course, one of the reasons we particularly wanted to do that was because it was an experiment to me. Of course, I couldn't tell the parents that, but I wanted to see, is this going to work? So we started with very simply, and we rented space in public school, empty buildings. They gave us space for nothing really. And so we had to have that to go on. And my husband suggested, we really had already a group of parents that were interested in doing this from the school that I taught at before, the kindergarten class, and my colleague had been there as well. So we had people that were interested. So that's one of the first things you have to do, of course, is to get a group of parents that are interested and want to support you. But we never had a parent board or let them make decisions. We kept it a parent-run school.
Teacher-run
I'm
school,
sorry,
right?
a teacher-run school.
Mhm.
Thanks, sweetie. A teacher-run school so that it could be Montessori, truly Montessori.
Mhm.
And we didn't make, the other thing was we wanted to keep the tuition as low as possible because we wanted everybody to be able to come. So we really were very stringent about our finances and did not add things. I had good advice on that from my trainer, Hildegard Salzbacher in Milwaukee. And she said, you just, you keep it very simple. You do not have specialists. You don't have gym teachers. Montessori teacher can do all of these things. You don't have to be a specialist in anything, really, because your training tells you about the universal child. It prepares you to teach a child in any culture, any place on earth. Montessori was not writing for any particular group. She was looking at children from all different backgrounds and those that had really different kinds of needs, various kinds of needs. So they were in hospitals, they were in orphanages and so forth. We all know that. And you get the same results. It's just fascinating to me how that happens. So, but again, I think one of the keys to the sustainability is don't let it get too big. There is this human quality, whatever you want to call it, characteristic that we want everything to be bigger and better, and whatever we're successful with something at a certain extent, and then we just want to have more and more and more and more. Well, with children, just think about it. You can be very happy even with 2, 4, 6, 8 children, maybe even 10, but I don't think you're going to want to go to 40 in your own family. So in a school, I think we need to keep thinking. We thought from the beginning, 150 gives you a chance to have, from the youngest little ones at 18 months, going all the way through age 14. That gives you enough children to have a school of that size and to be able to, because I do think right from the get-go, you want to quickly build the classes so that you have children at the different levels, because now you have to build it slowly. You can't just jump right in, but gradually add the classes, add the ages, and you learn from each of the different ages, and teaching the teachers being trained at each level. So I think those are the major things I'd think about, and then to think about your goal, because if you're going to have a goal that's, academics are part of Montessori, that's for sure, and she talked about it. But what you're really looking for is trying to reach the human spirit within each of one of those children. So you want to, from the beginning, keep that as your focus and your mission. It's not the same as regular school and the kind of schooling most of us have had. We really want a complete human being. That's what Montessori talked about.
I think we've talked too about the importance of focusing on the human tendencies, the psychological characteristics, the sensitive periods, the absorbent mind, cosmic education, and staying focused on looking for those human tendencies in the classrooms and really knowing them and studying them and looking at Montessori's work again and again and again. We, as teachers at Forest Bluff School, every week we read some of Montessori's work or from another related book, but we really focus on relearning and covering her books. Well, we haven't read Standing's book in a long time, for instance, and that might be one to start reading again together and as a book group. And that's something you can do even if you just have 2 teachers in your school. You can reach out. Now we have so much connection by Zoom and finding others to be a community of Montessori educators to work on that together, because deepening our understanding of those human tendencies and the 4 planes and those characteristics helps us to reach the children and to really do the work in our classrooms. And we can get so far away from that so quickly if we're focusing on pressures, daily pressures from parents or daily pressures with children. And but that really is what makes it Montessori and what makes it special. And I think your leadership has really helped us in our school with that. Approaching it as a scholar and really wanting to study this long term, year after year. There's always more to learn. There's always more to read.
Even when you get to be a nonagenarian. I'm still learning every day. And that's the passion of it. And that's why it is the most fulfilling career I could possibly think of. What could be more special than being involved in something where you are learning every day? So we're very careful with our teachers that they understand that these we meet on Thursday nights, afternoons from 4 to 6 every week. The first hour is for running the school and talking about issues at school, but the second hour is always a book that we're reading or discussion in some way that helps each of us with our personal development and our personal journey, because you can't be really a good educator if you're not growing yourself and learning all the time.
I think too, when you ask the essential things to focus on and just starting out, you talked about not trying to get every single material necessarily if you're in certain situations. What would you focus on first?
Well, in the very beginning, you really don't, you want to get the basics, in the sensorial materials and so forth, the youngest ones, for example, but you don't have to have every single thing when you first start out. You can add as you go, but you don't, you really need to concentrate on the environment being prepared for the children with beauty, simplicity, less is more. Don't try to do too much. In my travels for Montessori, I went to South Africa and saw children in Soweto with using 4 blue and red rods, broomsticks painted that they had made. And the children, the same behavior that we see with the children using the very best Ninhus materials, the behavior is the same. The same thing when I went to New Zealand, seeing the same thing, and in India, just amazing in India, where the population is such that you'll have 30 children in the size of a room that in America, other parts of the world, you might have think that 10 or 20 would be plenty. So the way the children learn to move around and how they handle things, and the materials where they had, it was just amazing how they managed it all. So those kinds of things shouldn't discourage anybody because they don't have something that's perfect. You can make a beautiful Montessori environment. And we did in our first classroom in a basement. You can do it anywhere. Because the needs of children, after all, are really quite simple when they're little. They're not what all of us adults think they have to have. They're really quite simple, and they have to do with practical life and
grace and courtesy.
Yeah, and the behavior, of course, comes first. The grace and courtesy. That's the key. And when I was teaching those classrooms in the private school that I talked about, that was not a Montessori school, the grace and courtesy was the thing for all those children every year. A new group of 5 and 6-year-olds, I had 25 of them. And grace and courtesy was the most important thing that they learned, honestly. I could see them years later walking down the halls in the school when their other children were running and skipping and, acting silly or whatever. And that will hold. It's still a sensitive period for civil behavior. 6 and under is the key time. If it's older than that, you really have to, it's going to be remedial. they're going to have to be using different ways. But when they're little, it's simply they will model you. They will be fascinated with how do you close a door without making a sound. It's always amazed me how keyed in they are to detail at that age. So those are the important ones.
Thank you. Another question: when we are starting, what if we are starting the school year? You know, what do you focus on in the first weeks of starting a class?
Well, if it's a brand new class, or just you're restarting your class.
I think we can target both.
Okay.
We'll do one and then the other.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. I'm going to start this. I'll do the one when you're starting the class, since I had to do it so many times. You want to set up your room with the materials that you have available to you at the time, which might not be all of them, but the ones that are going to be permanent in the classroom, you set them all out in the shelves and have it arranged as nicely as you can, organized in the way that you think will work for the children. And then, but as you get closer, when the school's actually going to start, you're going to put them all away. And you're going to start with bare shelves. And you can imagine how my principal at that private school felt every year, explaining to the parents why their children were going to go into a room with nothing in it. But in any case, there were the tables and the rugs to unroll and that sort of thing. And a big box that we could call an orientation box, because it wasn't going to stay in the room, but it had objects in it that children could take out to use. They would be familiar with them. They would already know what to do with them, that they could have as a choice. And then we start with in a circle with the children, teaching them how you sit in a circle properly, how you
Roll out the rug.
Yes, and then you do practical life orientation kinds of things, like how you carry a chair, how you unroll a rug, and so forth. So you add a few of those every day so that they become comfortable in the room. They know how to use it. They know how to sit in a chair with a material, or they know how to work on a rug. They know how to not disturb each other. Really important to teach them mantras, like when they want your attention, instead of patting you on the shoulder or something, to stand and wait. And so that becomes a phrase when they're 3 years old that they can remember: stand and wait. So if they start to tug on you, you can ignore them for a little while and then finally look up and say, and stand and wait. And they pick it up and they enjoy that. They like knowing what's expected of them. So it's important that you have things like that. And also, even for safety, it's important that they know and will follow how you gather their attention as a group, as the entire group. So you're going to teach them. Different teachers use different things, all kinds of things, bells and this and that. I just would stand up and say, "Excuse me, please." And the way you say it, your body when you do it, and they love to control their bodies so that they stand completely still, like a game, kind of like Simon Says or something, where they stand like a statue, and for just a minute, and then you tell them what it is that you want to tell them. It's time to come to the circle now, or something like that. So that's important right from the beginning. So you're teaching them all of those things, but gradually you are bringing in 1 or 2 Montessori materials a day that will stay on the shelves. First, of course, they're going to be practical life, and some sweeping, polishing, flower arranging, pouring, those kinds of things. And you show that to a few children, different children. And so the next day, those children have a choice when they come to sit in the circle, and you ask them to come up to the box. Would you like to choose from the box, or would you like to choose something from the shelf that I've shown to you? And so gradually, over several months, everything is finally out from the closet that you want to have out at that time. And everything is ready to go, and the box disappears. And that's really important, because I go into Montessori classrooms and see that they have all kinds of things in the classroom that don't belong there. And of course, what happens, the research shows that in those classrooms, the children do not progress in the same way, because, and they're not as happy with each other. And they're, because really children want to do things that are purposeful. Just aimless activity becomes boring to them. And then they find all kinds of ways to entertain themselves that you may not like, that don't work well in a community. So those are thoughts on a brand new class, but you only have to do that. What I'm saying, if you have a Montessori school, you only do that once. Other times, Paula, you talk about what to do.
Well, the first day, especially, just orienting the children to the environment with the grace and courtesy presentations. And I learned from you to do it when you have a group or a small group, so you just reach more children. And pretty quickly, the older ones, if you have a classroom of 3 to 6 year olds, the older ones, you can ask them if they would like to demonstrate how to roll the rug, how to push in the chair, and so on. And the younger ones love to watch them, and the older ones love that role. And so you demonstrated that a lot. But one of the things I love about you taking the time to explain those things is the mannerism of your voice and your smile. And you can just imagine how enchanting that is for the children. And I think that's so important, that we start out with that enchantment, and that's how we capture their attention, is by being enchanting, being intriguing, being interested in things. And I know that we all struggle with children starting who are afraid to come in the room, who might be crying, who might be anxious. And some people are asking too about younger children, toddlers, children under the age of 3. And I think that enchantment, the smile, the love, preparing ourselves to be giving that love and displaying that enchantment helps the children right away to be drawn to you. And remember, Montessori said we want to draw the child in and intrigue them so that they will follow us, so they will link to the environment. So I think a lot of times when people are having trouble getting that start to happen, that might be the most important thing that they're missing, or that they need to refocus on, is the enchantment. I have something to show you. Oh, come, we have a goldfish in our room. Come and see the goldfish. And just bringing them in and getting them started. I want to show you Africa, the map of Africa. And you start Zimbabwe, and the way you say the words, the way you move with your body, they just become enchanted with that. And you are helping to link them with your excitement, with your interest, to the environment, to those materials. So we always started our school with a handshake. This is the custom at our school, and that's the special way to make the connection with each individual. So when the first child comes in the room, getting down at their level, we hold out our hand for them to take our hand. We look them right in the eye and say, "It's so good to see you, Jeffrey," or "Welcome, Susan." And they feel that warmth. You see their face, that touch base. And no matter the age, whether they're 14 years old or 18 months old, that's how we start every day in our school. And if you already are involved in giving a presentation, because a few minutes have gone by, you're already doing, let's say, a puzzle map on the floor with a child. As the new ones walk in, they know the first thing they do when they come in the room will always be to go right to you, to find you, and that you will stop what you're doing and take a moment to shake their hand and say good morning. That big smile for every single child, and that love. I think that helps them too, to reset every day, no matter what happened the day before, that this is a new day and that we're starting again. But that fresh start, it's just a beautiful way to get started in the day, is the shaking the hand and taking a moment. And it gives you a chance to check in with each child. You see their expression, you see their body language, whether they're having a bad day, and you're able to say something to them, and you're able to get them right into work. "Oh, I'm so glad to see you today, Susie. We're going to start with a table washing. When you've put your coat away, come over. I'm going to show you the table washing." It's the way you say it, and they just can't wait. So that connecting, that linking, to get them right into work and right into the concentration that will settle them and help them to feel good all over.
Yeah,
I think that's
good.
important.
Very well said. You
Well,
can tell she's a good teacher.
I got it from you. So that's where we know it came from.
Do you still want to talk a little bit more about if someone is struggling to normalize a classroom, what other things would you recommend they focus on?
Well, I'll start by saying, when there are struggles, I think it's really important to realize the role of home life and the parents. And before problems begin, we always try to reach out to the parents first. So making phone calls to the parents, inviting them in, trying to have one-on-one, face-to-face contact with parents before school even begins, so we can ask them about their home life. We can ask them what they see at home. We could set that tone that we are partners with each other, that we are a team together, and that we are going to try to solve problems together. We're going to try to help their children together. We're going to try to figure out what's happening with their children together. And then you have that base. And when a problem begins with a child, you can pick up the phone, you can talk to the parent when you see them, and you have that base of trust to start with. And they sense that you're really listening to them when you ask them questions. What do you notice at home? I'm seeing something, I'm watching it. What, not making it sound like you've made a decision yet, or that you have a determination, or that you have made that you have a certain mindset, but you're asking, you're letting them know, I'm thinking about this. What do you see? And you set that tone of partnership. I think that's very important, because you're normalizing the whole community. It's not just the children in the classroom. They're bringing everything in with them.
Right. That's beautifully said, dear. And I think also so the parents are really, really part of this. And it's important, and I don't know about every country, but our country, we've gotten right now at the moment is everything has to be, you have to call in a specialist right away. I don't find that is really a very good thing to do right off the bat. I think, and right now people are doing it too quickly and not taking the time to really give the child a chance. It is within every child, these human tendencies to explore, to repeat, to actually orient and do all of these things. That's there, and it's what we have to work with. So we just have to find a way to reach it. And the planes of development tell us what are the keys, the sensitive periods, and the absorbent mind for the youngest ones, for example. So those are all of our clues as to what we could or should be doing. But of course, there are always going to be some children, and there are always going to be some children's particular days when the day is not going well, or a long period for various reasons. And I think more than anything, we have to develop a little more patience, a little more understanding, a little more faith that it is going to happen. Because I can tell you, I taught many children thinking, oh, well, this is going to be one's just not going to make it. I'm really sorry, but I'm doing the best I can and nothing's happening. And then I'll see them later, the next year, the year after, or even much older, children in high school. And I'll think, oh, for heaven's sakes, look what they're doing. Who would have thought so-and-so would have turned out like that? So it's that has given me such faith in what we're doing and in Montessori, because over and over and over again, that would happen. The key is you cannot let the child feel that something is wrong with them. And that's the message they get, no matter how hard you try. when they have to go to somebody and they're going to take tests and they're going to do this and that. They feel like something's wrong with them. Well, you know how we feel when something's wrong with us. We don't have the courage to go out there and keep trying, working at something that's really hard for us. And what we find in our situation with Montessori, children are not afraid to fail. They're not afraid to make a mistake because it's treated just as a part of normal life and learning. And they're not shamed in any way or whatever for even for the bad behavior. It's stopped. We don't let anybody get away with behaving badly because that's not good for them. But what I always found worked for us, and everybody's going to, in different cultures, different countries, will have a different system that works for them. For me, and I was taught this in my training, having the child who's having a hard time handling freedom, because that's what it amounts to. They simply cannot do well with choices and so forth. They're not ready for it. So I would have them come over and sit next to me quietly and just sit there and stay with me. And sometimes with my arm around them. They want to get up and move. But to sit next to me, I was always on the floor. So it was easy to do that. And then I'd be working with somebody at the same time, maybe several children, and different things they'd be doing in different parts of the room and so forth, but always coming to me back and forth. So there was something interesting always going on where I was. So it wasn't like an isolation. I mean, the idea of putting a child in isolation when they already can't control themselves, or it doesn't seem to make a whole lot of sense to me. I think they need the stability, the trust, the faith, the love, honestly, the belief in them as a legitimate human being. And they can feel all of that from even the body contact of sitting close with you. So that seemed to be what worked well for me most of the time. Now, there are going to be the times when that won't work. And that's why you want to have I'm speaking now the primary, you want to have an assistant in the classroom who could take a child that needed to leave the room for a few minutes, but again, with the assistant, not out to sit in the hallway, not to go to a principal. What can the principal do? They don't have the relationship with the child. In a inner city, very successful Montessori public school classroom that I observed several years ago in Chicago, the way they got started was to have two women who really were sponsoring the program as volunteers sit in the hallway outside the classroom. And if a child needed that kind of attention, these were children from homes that were quite desperate. And so if they needed that extra kind of love and attention, they would go out to the hallway to these two women whom they grew to love, and the parents all loved because they talked to the parents too. So they were kind of the bridge for those early days when the children were hitting each other and being quite violent with each other and so forth. And it was so perfect by the time I went to see it. It was just amazing. And the parents were so appreciative that they actually came to school the day I was coming. They left their jobs that day to come and appreciate to say how excited they were about Montessori and appreciative. So that's the way we would. But I just want to add one more thing. I had something that worked every time. With children that you could get to sit in the circle for a couple of minutes at the end of the day all together. I would make up stories. And I had a story about Tommy, and Tommy couldn't do anything right. And I had more fun making up those stories. And then I had stories about another child whose name was Michael, or I'd make it up. And they did everything right, the way you were supposed to do it. And so they would have a model of what you were supposed to do. Well, of course, when we'd sit down at the end of the circle, which story do you think they always asked for? It was Tommy. So you get a sense of where their minds are and what they're worried about and what they're fearful about that you never see. But it just, anyway, so I'd go into the elementary classrooms later, years later and ask them if they wanted a story about Tommy, and they'd still ask for Tommy.
Guess you'd have to change the names.
Oh, look,
Yeah.
Tommy stayed the same. Everybody else did.
Hopefully you don't have a child named Tommy come to your class.
Well, happened so
but
far.
hopefully they understand it's a story, right? But Maria Montessori talked about that, taking a child out into the garden, taking them away and then bringing them back just for some time to settle. But I love learning that from you, the idea that the safe place to be when you can't control yourself is right next to the loving adult who's there for you. And that you were always, I learned to do the same thing, that you were always doing some teaching at the same time. So they had something really interesting to watch, and it made them want to get material out and start working again. So it invited them to get right back into concentrating by watching what someone else was doing and being next to you, just that moment of settling. I even had children sometimes come and sit next to me and say, I just need to come sit next to you. I was disturbing somebody. They did it for themselves, but that was really a lovely way to do that. So hopefully that covers a lot of ideas about normalizing. And I think too, one thing I really picked up from you was having the long-term faith, understanding that it takes a lot of time. It can take years to get your classroom settled because of the cycle of the oldest ones having been with you since they were 3. So I think it's so important for new teachers starting out that they have the faith that you just have to keep working on this and don't get discouraged. One of the things that we often would do is every day when you walk away, you're always thinking of the children and the issues and the things that didn't go well. But if you stop and write down, if you force yourself to write down 3 beautiful moments you saw during the day, or write them down when you see them, just jot down a word, then you will remember the pouring that you saw, the child stepping back to let someone else go in front of them, the gentle moment, the child who was concentrating for a few minutes that you thought, oh my gosh, it's finally happening. You forget those things at the end of the day, but it's so important to remind ourselves of those positives, because those are the glimmers that kept Maria Montessori going. And those are the glimmers that will keep us going. I want to say one other thing too, because we're talking a lot about primary, since that's really the level that most people are in. But when you think about, I taught lower elementary for many years. And in elementary, of course, you have a different plane of development, different characteristics, and you're going to do everything you do differently. And I would say the main thing is that rather than, you're still modeling with your body language and the way you speak to them and the way you handle things, but you can't really rely on that because they are not as enamored by you as the younger ones are. But what you have that's an advantage that you don't have when you're starting out new children who are younger is you can talk to that reasoning mind, and you can explain to them what you're thinking, and you can give them clues. I'm asking you to come sit by me because you weren't handling that freedom today. So come by me, and when you're ready, we're going to start this. Or, you can just help them be a little more cognizant of why you're doing what you're doing and what your goals are. And you always want to start out more restrictive, firm, more intervening and invasive than you think, because you can always loosen up. You want to, especially if you're starting new children who are older, they're 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 years old, and they haven't had Montessori yet, you're going to start with them, telling them what to do, showing them how to do follow-up work. Now you're going to do this. I showed you this. Now we're going to do this. Because pretty quickly they catch on, and you can start to say, so now what follow-up work would you like to do? Here are your choices. So giving limited choices. With the elementary children, you're just going to do it more verbally and cognizantly. With the younger children, you're not going to say any of that. Of course, you're just going to do it. but you want to allow that freedom. You want to let that out gradually and not just let everybody come in and start taking things off the shelf and just mayhem and think it's going to work. And that's something for leaders of schools to help their new teachers understand. Start out much more sort of a conventional school than you think you need to, because you always can go in that direction where you allow more and more freedom, and eventually the children are doing it on their own. So I think that's very
That's
important.
beautiful, honey. That's great. I'm so glad you said that.
Okay.
Also, when you talked about reason, you know that you can use humor in the elementary too. Don't do that with the primary, but the humor they love and understand and will pay attention to. But also in our school, teacher-run school, so the teachers are very invested in the future of the school and in the children. So when somebody's having a problem with a child, all of our teachers have 10 other people or 9 other people at the table on Thursday nights in a discussion that will give them guidance on what the problem is, because there isn't enough mentoring going on, I think, either. But Paula, you mentioned the head of school. Yes, it's certainly the head of school, but we have all of the teachers with their different levels of experience, and also they know that family, they know that child. Remember, there are only 150 in the whole school. You can remember 150 students really well and know how to help and how to raise them, so you can help your friends. And I'm so glad, Paula, you mentioned the length of time it takes to get a classroom to truly be functioning as a Montessori classroom. Minimum of 6 years. That's because you want the 3-year-olds that you brought in to have 6-year-olds as their models that you also brought in. So it takes 6 years. Don't expect it before that. And then you really won't want to quit. My last year in the classroom, I was 74 years old, getting up and down off that floor. It wasn't always easy, but you don't want to quit, because it's the most fun place you could ever be in the world. It's peaceful. It's a sanctuary. The problems of the adults in the world out there just don't even have to cross your mind, because you're dealing with the problems of a child under, for me, it was under 6. And believe me, they're a lot simpler at that age than they are when they're adolescents and up. So, so it's a wonderful place, and we have real longevity with our teachers. I think because they have each other and for support. If they ever get discouraged, about anything, they're loved by each other the same way they love their children. Honestly, we're very fortunate.
Yeah, I think that's important.
Thank you. I will read a few questions already from the chat that were coming when you were talking. Pam was asking, since you recommend starting a new school by gradually adding classes and numbers of students, do you recommend starting with all levels, or just one or a few?
Just one. Just one.
Definitely, Paula's right. No, you build very gradually, but it will depend a little bit. In our school, there were 3 of us as co-founders. My daughter Lynn, who taught that first class, while my other colleague and I were going for training. She taught the 3 to 6. They were only 3 and 4-year-olds, because it was the beginning. So you start with 3 and 4s. So you don't even have 5s. And then, so she did the first year. And so then we went on, but my colleague had taught second grade, first and second grade at the private school where I was teaching kindergarten. So that was her age level, the elementary. So we did start pretty quickly, maybe in a year or 2, where she would have the older children
who graduated.
But some of them came in new. Some of them came in for her as 5s and 6s, and it was already an elementary situation. 6-year-old,
6 and 7,
and 6 and 7, and then gradually. And then, so that's how you do it. You don't, I can't imagine just jumping right in. And that, of course, is one of the problems today. A public school district will decide, oh, this magic, we can fix everything now. All we got to do is, whatever. And it won't work that way, because remember, if a child hasn't started from the beginning, and we like to get them at 18 months, our young children's community is just beautiful. They only come for 3 hours in the morning. But we really can see the difference when they come in from that program versus even as young as 3. So you always want, when they've missed these moments, these planes of development, these sensitive periods, when they've missed them, they've missed them. It's never going to be the same. They are. Our trainer used to describe it as dropped stitches. Those of you that knit, you drop a stitch and it's, and you keep going and it's there, it's still there. So it will never be as the same for that child as it would have been. However, that doesn't mean that you can't do wonderful things for children who come in at age 9, 10, 11. We've had them come. Even a few that have gone into our 12 to 14-year-old program. It'll just be a little different for them, because they will have to learn about how you handle freedom with responsibility. And that's a process. And they won't, the discovery with the trinomial cube for a child of 9 or 10 is never going to be the same as if they had done that puzzle when they were 4 or 5. It's not. They're not going to be able to. So you can't make up for that, but you'll still have. You can still have wonderful children. Just don't take too many of them. I think I want to suggest Phyllis Potash Lewis's book, published by Montessori 360. Be sure to get it if you're elementary, or even if you're not. It's magic. And she says she and other trainers who've taught for years have felt that maximum don't take more than 10% of the children into your classroom in those older years that didn't have Montessori background. So you
don't want to start a whole class at that age.
You have to do it very differently. It isn't that you can't use the knowledge that you have from the planes of development, all of that you can, but it's going to, they're not going to be this self-starting in the way that the other children are, who are choosing from the time they were 18 months, whether they wanted to do this puzzle or do the biscuit baking. It's not the same. So you just,
Another question that came that was regarding the start was about parents. And let me try to find that question. It somehow ran away. But the idea behind the question was, what should I do as a teacher when there are parents who are, giving us their child for the first time, and they don't really want to give up. They keep on holding the child. How can we help the parents to let go?
Well, I think that comes to your parent communication. And, this covers a little bit of what we didn't talk too much about earlier, of reaching out to the community first and preparing the community before you try to start your school. Is maybe getting together in a small group, either as a book group, or, if you're wanting to start a school, you want to introduce this idea of Montessori, inviting people in, go meeting at your library or wherever and talking with them about Montessori and giving them some information that could help them at home. And you're introducing these ideas gradually, the idea of independence, so that the parents start having some buy-in and you have some conversations where you get to know them. You're going to say something different to one parent than you would to another parent, just knowing what they need to hear because you know their personality and you know their child. right? So it's going to be different for each one. But I think that usually separation anxiety has much more to do with the parent than with the child. And so when we help them to understand that and help them to embrace the idea that they know this is going to be a really wonderful place for their child and they want their child to be there, even the infant can even sense that. Even when the infant is crying and the parent feels sad about, separating for them, I'm so happy for you. You get to be with Miss So-and-so today, or, in this environment, I feel so good about it. I'm so happy. I can't wait to see you later, but I'm giving you, and that handing over.
Yeah. Well, and if the teacher is confident, and whoever's helping in the hallway for our school will be the head of school greeting all the children coming in. Again, you can do it with 150. That she helps the parent by her confidence and so forth. But also, there's so much preparation for it for us. For example, we take parents into our classrooms on what we call a visit tour. A mother and a father, they both have to come, and they go into each classroom, not through a mirror or anything like that. They go into each classroom and for a few minutes, and the older ones, they walk around the classroom with the admissions person who's guiding them and explaining a little bit about what's going on. And it never bothers our children. They don't pay any attention. And so they have come into this classroom of 10 to 12 little 18-month to 3-year-olds. And I'm telling you, it is so hard to get them to leave because they want to stand there and watch. They can't believe it. Here's a child over here washing dishes. They're 18 months doing all these things, and they can't believe it. So they actually don't have to take our word for it, that their children are going to be fine here, and that the children really, this is the way children will behave in this kind of an environment. Even the very rambunctious ones, even the ones that are running wild at home and whatever, get into this environment with this calm, wonderful teacher. We have wonderful teachers in this. And so that's one thing. The other thing is the preparation that we have with a parent-child class and lectures. And that is when the parent will bring the newborn in up to when, before they walk. And that's maybe 3 times or 4 times in the fall, and again in the spring, so that we have a room that's called the parent-child room, and the birth to 3 trained teacher is there and shows them and has the child. So they show them how to do this with your child at home. So they've had all that kind of preparation. So I think Paula's answer is perfect for all the ones that, in spite of all of that, just can't let go. We started at a time when 3-year-olds didn't go to school. I mean, it was early to send them at 4. So it's amazing how it's changed. Now it's those early years that we are having. So I guess it's going to be different in whatever part of the world you are. But we want them, we're only talking about 3 hours in the morning. They have most of their time at home with their parent. Yeah.
I think too, I saw another question that I did see earlier in emails to this type of question about really people feeling very overwhelmed, and especially after the pandemic, children coming in who just have missed the grace and courtesy, or are used to being alone, and parents who are very anxious. Things feel very different to people. So they have children running and yelling and just exhibiting a lot of behavior that maybe we weren't dealing with as much before. And I always just think Maria Montessori was dealing with all that when she was starting. So we have to just remember, this isn't the first time this has ever happened, to not get too overwhelmed. But I think the best thing, if you can, is to think of starting over. And if you can break up into smaller groups, maybe even meet at the park with a couple of parents and their children before school starts, or just get a reset on a weekend, break children up into smaller groups so that you can start to address this, how do we walk, not we don't do this and we don't do that, but how do we walk? How do we pass each other without bumping? How do we get someone's attention without yelling? How do we do these things? And with the older ones, again, you can use humor. With the elementary, use humor, and you can talk about the why. But with the younger ones, you're just demonstrating and modeling that for the parents when you're meeting with them. I think we do need to start over if people are finding themselves in situations that just feel very overwhelming. So I hope that helps people coming out of the pandemic and feeling that they're dealing with this for the first time. It's all been seen before, so we have to remember that and kind of keep each other going with that.
And after World War II in England, that's exactly what they were dealing with when Standing was writing that book.
Oh,
those war orphans, and that was in France too. Yeah, so you know, this unfortunately is not new. Yeah,
it's true.
Okay, let's go to we have more or less 2-3 questions from the registration forms that you have chosen. So let's go to these. There was a question from Justina: how to teach stuff if there are no Montessori trained teachers in my country, because it's very hard to find people with Montessori training in my country.
Yeah, so I wanted to be sure to mention, for people who feel they're in a bit of a vacuum in places, one of the really exciting initiatives that the Association Montessori International has taken on under the Educateurs Sans Frontières. So if you go to the Association Montessori International's website and you go to Educateurs Sans Frontières, under there's something called CORE, C-O-R-E, and it stands for Community-Rooted Education. And the community-rooted initiatives that have been made in South Africa, in India, in several places in Africa, it really is being done where a Montessori trainer comes in and helps some people in the community to learn a few presentations and make a few of their own materials. And they give them a few talks about the theory and the principles of Montessori, and then they leave. And those people can begin with that knowledge, the very, very, very beginnings and minimal amount of what you can do to help children. And as they begin that, and they start schools and they start communities, and it starts to build from there, the trainer comes back again. And they, you know, over time, over months, over years, are building off of this. So this is meeting this exact need. And you may be, I don't know which African country this person who asked the question is in, but you might not be that far away from one of these initiatives. And it may be possible, now that so many of us do have access to the internet, to connect with some people and learn about this. So this is a really exciting initiative and something we all want to support. You can do that by going to that website and seeing there are ways also to donate for these programs to expand. So there's always a way to get some information and some knowledge. The other thing I would say is reading Montessori's books, anything you can get your hands on, and really just reading one sentence, one paragraph at a time, and really studying it and thinking about what she meant. Reading Paula's books, very helpful. I hope reading my book will be helpful too. Just find something that you can keep digging into and going back to and building from there, because I think that's one of the reasons your story is inspiring to me, is that you did not necessarily start out with all the training and everything, but you read a lot. You read Standing's book, you read The Absorbent Mind. And really, I think if you dig into something, even if you're by yourself, you can get a lot of pieces, important pieces of Montessori just from that writing. So trying to find access to those books, to that writing, is a really good place, to start. And then we all need to keep reading. We need to keep growing, keep revisiting all of that. I hope that's helpful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Of course.
I just was thinking while you were talking, sweetie, that I was 50 years old before I was able in a situation to take the AMI training. And I'd been in Montessori for 30 years before that. So it's a gradual thing. Just know that that's the gold star. You really want to get to the AMI training eventually, if you possibly can, because that's the training that she set up. And the trainers their training is much more extensive than it is in the other trainings, which are good. I mean, get what you can, get the best that you can, and some of it will be online, perhaps. But just
Don't
even
stop.
a little Montessori is better than no Montessori, is all I can say. So, yeah,
it goes a long way.
Yeah, because really the most important thing that you're working on is your attitude and beliefs, your moral values, and toward all human beings. All human beings are legitimate human beings. So it's really getting into what all the great religions have taught us, that it's about love. And so that's what we're really, you can't learn enough about that. So, so it's your growth as a human being the whole time too. Yes. So
yeah, I think it's a really good point too, to not be intimidated if you don't have everything, all the materials, all of the training, some sort of, to just know that the most important thing is that inner work, is the preparation of the adult. So in talking about preparing ourselves and starting this theme of starting, I think even just starting the day by, I always try to take a moment, even if I was in a big hurry to get to school, to take a moment to sit down, light a candle, just 2-minute prayer or meditation, or even if it was in the car on the way to school, just to breathe and try to get in the mood of being with the children. And I would do that also for the teachers as the head of school, so that when I walked into the school building, I could smile, I could be present, I could be slowed down, I could be calm, because your mood affects everyone around you. And if you're the head of school, that affects the teachers and the parents and the children. If you are the teacher, you affect the other teachers, you affect your head of school back, you affect the parents, and you affect the children, you affect your assistant. So much of what we can do in life with Montessori is modeling. And so many of the problems that we have, we can address by going back to working on ourselves. So we really don't have control over those children, even our own biological children, but we do have control over ourselves. And so taking the time to do that is so important. Taking the walk in nature, saying a prayer, meditating, whatever calms you and helps you to reset. That's the most important place we can put our attention, even just starting the day, because it's cloaking yourself in the Montessori approach that you're trying to do. That's the secret, not this material, that it's all of what we have in us.
That's very well said, Paula. And the one thing that is different for human beings, of course, today is the technology, which works against what you're just talking about. We love this technology. Look, we get to Zoom and do all this. Of course, it's wonderful, but it's for adults, and it shouldn't be for the children. And they're not ready for it. It's a skilled tool for the mature mind, and we can get something out of it and benefit from it. But it also speeds up and makes demands on us constantly. So it is a new discipline for us to learn how to live with this and have it serve us and not us be slaves to it. And that's another really important example to show to our children, so they don't see us with this object in our hand all the time. And that just brings me to the sense of family values, moral values, and reading. Reading really, because of the technology, we're having a problem with the children in the schools in many situations. They're not reading enough. And so they don't have the vocabulary, they don't have the communication skills. So
thoughtfulness.
Yes, and the thoughtfulness. So we should all be reading. We should all have a book next to us.
Slowing down.
Doesn't matter if you just read 2 pages. Sometimes that's all I get in.
Slowing down.
Yeah. So yeah.
I wanted to share a few photos that a few people were sharing with me. See it? Can you see photos changing? Okay.
Oh, great.
Going down.
That's so fun. Oh,
Wow.
it's fun everywhere I go when I meet somebody. Oh my gosh. They'll say that it was one of my mother's books that helped them get into Montessori. So that's really special.
Oh.
It's really hard not to cry. Wow. Thank you for these.
Oh, that's magnificent.
My gosh.
Just magnificent.
Wow.
Oh my. Oh, look at your beautiful faces. Oh my goodness. Just wonderful. Oh.
That's amazing.
Oh, good gracious.
Incredible. Oh. Wow. Oh, there's the original.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so great.
Yeah. Oh.
Wow.
Oh, Lucie, that's just amazing.
Oh, it's a lot.
Wonderful people.
Oh my
Look
gosh.
at you all. Thank you so much.
Wow.
That is just beautiful.
Really special.
Oh.
Really special.
That was wonderful. Wonderful. See, thank you, all of you people that did that for us. That is just magnificent. And I can't tell you, if I ever see you anyplace, please ask me to autograph anything. Every time I autograph one, all I can think of is, oh, thank goodness I'm not still writing it. And that's because I wrote those books about each different age level and so forth in parts of my journey, because it was the information wasn't out there, and it was so important. It just had to be out there for people. So you make my life worthwhile. Thank you so much. That was beautiful. And Paula's book, I cannot recommend it highly enough to you for today's world. You really, and it will help you. It's a book you can hand to anybody to explain about Montessori, and it won't be too technical for them or too whatever. It will have all the meat, all the important things, all the inspiration and passion. But it'll tell them, it'll suit them where they are. And then they can go in deeper.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. That was really special.
That was wonderful.
Thank you, Lucie.
Yes.
You're welcome. I have one last question.
Okay.
How do you feel about Montessori today? And do you think it's going in a good direction? What things do you think we need to watch out for or keep in mind?
Should I go first? Yeah, I thought that would be. Well, I think that things are going in a really wonderful direction. I think that people are connected all over the world right now on Montessori. I think that there's a lot of awareness, especially in the United States, and I believe in other countries as well, that research is showing, and anecdotally we can see that many children are not getting what they need in conventional school. And so there is this openness right now and this eagerness for other ways to educate children and better ways. And it's a prime time for Montessori to step forward. And sometimes if you ever get discouraged and think there isn't enough Montessori in the world, just realize there's more Montessori than there is any other form of education besides conventional. I mean, if you look at the numbers, it's really astonishing how much more Montessori there is than anything else. So we are very much in the lead of an alternative way of Montessori. I think that the awareness of Montessori has grown tremendously. But I also, and the reputation of being positive, I think has gone in the right direction. And now, as many of our children have had not just primary, but elementary and adolescent programs as well, these are the children who are now going to be the adults with children who need to go to school, who are going to hopefully be saying, I want Montessori for my children. I had that. But I think what we need to watch out for is there's work to be done on getting on the same page about what are the most important principles in Montessori. I think that if we stay focused on the broad strokes of what Montessori is about, but we stay very clear about what those are, that's very, very important. People can take the name Montessori and misrepresent it and say things that aren't really true to Maria Montessori's work. And I had somebody ask me about less than a year ago whether I thought we should get rid of the word Montessori altogether, because basically Montessori is best practices in education. Montessori is what really works, and research shows that. Maybe we should just take away the word Montessori. Even Maria Montessori herself said this is the child's method. And I said, I don't think so, because Montessori means what Maria Montessori's insights were, and those gifts that she gave us, the knowledge that she gave us of what she observed. And that knowledge, those gifts, those insights, how they are best defined, is being protected by the Association Montessori International. That is where the archives are. The training is staying consistent. So we need to be looking there for these principles and spreading them. And when we can all agree, no matter what training or what organization or what group is working on Montessori, if we can all agree together on what those principles are, then we can represent to the rest of the world what it is. And I think that's very important, that we really work to be authentic and that we keep going in that direction. So it doesn't mean that, somebody can't start with very little information, but we all are on this journey of trying to be more authentic to what Maria Montessori saw. So, and to understand her work better. And you can be working in Montessori for how many years and still be learning more and becoming more authentic. So none of us are really there, but we want to encourage each other and help each other. So that's what I think we need to look out for, with an open, warm heart and accepting each other, but that we're all working towards this together.
That's beautiful, yeah. Paula. And I, of course, for me, I have to be very, very positive, because I started out when I remember one person saying to me, I said something about Montessori, and they said, was that new spaghetti? I mean, in that restaurant. But anyway, now literally anybody you see almost anywhere has heard the name Montessori, and that to me is a huge victory, just as a beginning. And I'm very excited about all of it, and that it's all, of course, that it is the international form of education. Nobody else can go from country to country and have and do it. Yes, the same thing, because she really was a very universal person, an international person, and so that's what she she built. She recognized that the child is the same and historically the same. It's still the caveman's brain. It's still the human tendencies of the cave people. So all that's very positive. So what do I worry about? Well, the most important thing I worry about, I suppose, is that we'll lose one aspect of her work that is really the work of a genius and completely unique. Nobody else has done anything like this ever before. And she did it so perfectly that I know it works. Now, that doesn't mean that somebody else might not come up with this or that or whatever, but she developed a whole system. And it's those materials that, of course, we all recognize it. So we talk about the materials, but you can have, as Paula really intimated, you can have all the materials and the beautiful prepared environment. And you can even have the trained AMI Montessori teacher, whatever, and still not have a Montessori classroom. And that's because of the spiritual aspects that Paula talked about. But I don't want to, so we don't want to lose that. But I'm not so worried about us losing that, because it belongs to all of humanity. That's human development, and we're learning more and more about human development. We're paying more attention to it than we have before. So I don't worry about that so much, but the actual tools that she gave us, the toolkit she gave us, so we don't have to reinvent the wheel. We just have to understand these new materials and how to use them properly and so forth. And we will have exactly what she said in London after World War II. She said we would have students that have learned all of these things, much more than their peers, and they've done so without any pain, without any stress, without any forced limits on their personality or development. So we mustn't lose that. And that's what drove me to write those books, so that we wouldn't lose this, because wouldn't that be a shame to have discovered something like that and then have it lost? And that just reminds me of a latest article published by my daughter, Angela Lillard, at the University of Virginia. She's comparing the discovery of Copernicus to the solar system and so forth, and the discovery that the Earth really goes around the sun and not the other way around. You know, it took them hundreds of years to accept that. I think it's 500 years or something. So Montessori's got plenty of time to get accepted all the way. I have no doubt that it will, because you have to, you can see it. You can go into a classroom and see the children behaving this way and be totally astonished by it, what the human being can do. I mean, we mustn't be discouraged about human beings. There's nothing wrong with what the Creator created. It's what we're doing with it after it gets here that's causing the problems. So anyway, thank you all so much. You're just so wonderful. And it just brings tears to my eyes, as Paula says, to think of you all reading my books. That you can't imagine what that means to me. It's just wonderful. Bless you all.
There's Anna from Ukraine.
Oh my goodness, the Ukraine. We're all praying. Yes, but you're all just incredible.
Yeah, everywhere you are. And isn't that amazing that we can get together and that people can be all over the world in all different kinds of situations, and that we share this passion for children in this way. It's really, really special.
And Denise up there, I just saw you, yes, pioneers. Whenever the teachers have a tough day, I remind them, we're pioneering. That's why it's tough. So good for you. That was the right words. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you for an inspiring morning.
And thank you, Lucie, for putting us all together, and all your hard work and everything you're doing. You do it so beautifully. Thank you so much.
Many great resources for everyone, for this amazing community. So thank you.
Thank you. Thanks. Thank you for giving us your time, for making our Sunday brighter, and as many people write in the chat, feeling more inspired for the next week and for the whole year.
Oh,
Thank
good.
you very much.
Bless you.
Excellent.
Let's hope this will inspire and help more people around the world. And thank you for joining us from, I believe, at least the 5 continents that I have seen.
It's amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.